night. She is a viper in the courtroom. Fascinating writing. And an absolute pleasure in the studio. That's true. Attorney Heather Hansen.
Thank you.
Looking very good and democratic.
That's it.
He is a former Navy SEAL and a special agent for the FBI and now runs the security firm United States Continued Services. Jonathan Gilliam is back.
Good to be here, literally running.
Yes, really. It's not a bead of sweat on you. And she is a Democratic political consultant who works with the great Doug Schoen. I didn't know that. Jessica Tarloff joins us. Welcome. Let's get to the Daily Download. Well, the Senate today approving a bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security through September. Meanwhile, Congress voted on a separate clean bill designed to fund Homeland Security for the next 3 weeks. But they will now have to negotiate with the Senate. How's that going to go? In both instances, neither bill calls into question President Obama's immigration amnesty. To get the latest on what is going on, I'm joined now by a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, Congressman Mike Kelly from Pennsylvania's 3rd District. Welcome to the show, Congressman. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me on. I sure appreciate it.
So where exactly are we now in terms of DHS funding?
Well, you know what? I will just say this to you. Back in January 13th, we passed a piece of legislation, H.R. 240, that fully funded the Department of Homeland Security. And I thought at that point we were done with the work in the House. We sent it over to the Senate. And as you know, the rules in the Senate are so much different than the rules in the House. The minority actually has great power to block things. I'm disappointed from the standpoint that I thought we could get something through the Senate. They all flew home today, by the way, so I think we're staying tonight. We're going to figure out what we can do to make sure we protect the American people. But it's confusing for me. I come out of the private sector. I'm not a legislator by career. I'm a legislator because my dealership was taken away from me a couple of years ago, and I had to fight to get it back. And I thought at some point it's time for private citizens to go and fight for it, not just themselves, but everybody else. So where we are right now, and I will be very clear with you, I cannot tell you where we are going to be tonight. I can tell you where I knew we were, and that was H.R. 240, which fully funded Homeland Security. Now I understand what we want to do is, look, if the Senate disagrees with us, I have no problem with that. Let's go to conference. Let's sit down and discuss with members from both sides and both parties, sit down and work something out that makes sense. I think the American people deserve no less than that opportunity. I'm just not understanding right now why we couldn't get through H.R. 240, why we can't get to a conference right now, and I'm going to find out more as the evening goes on. But we have to get to a conference to be able to make sure that we can fund Homeland Security. We will work it out one way or the other. We are not going to leave our citizens defenseless.
Very good. And do you want a provision in the bill to go after the president's amnesty plan?
Oh, yeah, well, of course. You know, this is what shocks me to a greater extent. I've been here now. I've been here 4 years. I've watched a president dismantle a former constitutional law professor who said, I think at least 20-some times, that he does not have the power to grant amnesty to people, and then turned around and went ahead and granted amnesty to people when people back home were saying, you have to stop him. So we said, we're trying to do just that. We're trying to use the rule of law, and I'm not sure I understand. I have great respect for both parties. I mean that sincerely. What I don't understand is how an elected legislator can go and defend unconstitutional activity and say, well, you got to understand the way it goes. I don't understand the way it goes. And I will tell you what, the people that I represent back home, the 705,647 members of Pennsylvania's 3rd District, the state of Pennsylvania and the country as a whole, are scratching their heads right now and say, I don't understand under our form of government why this was allowed to come forward. We have to take a stand now on our Constitution. But having said that, we also are going to fund Homeland Security so that our citizens are kept safe. H.R. 240 did exactly that, and that's the part that I looked at, but we already had a piece of legislation. By the way, the only legislative body up until this morning, late this morning, when the Senate sent something back over to us, and then as they were voting on it, they had their bags packed and were out the door. You know what? I'm an automobile dealer. The one thing I tell everybody that works with me to make sure our store can stay open is we don't leave the lot till the last customer's gone. And I just don't understand why here, for some reason, the clock only matters when you need to get out of town. The clock doesn't matter when you're protecting the American people. That is, to me, an egregious oversight.
Well, you certainly sound passionate about it, Congressman. Your Irish side is definitely coming out.
We better be passionate about it. This is our country. This is our Constitution. This is our future. And anybody that thinks this is about political people battling back and forth, Republicans versus Democrats, no, this is about America's future and the form of government we have. And 1.4 million Men and women in uniform have fought and died to make sure that we have this. To us now to abandon a process and say, doesn't quite fit with what I really feel like doing today, that's bull. That's absolute bull. So as far as passion, yeah, my passion runs really hard on it. I don't understand why we can't get these things done, but I do understand this. We have the ability to go to conference with the Senate. We have the ability to pass legislation. We already did pass legislation. Again, H.R. 240, please, the listeners, go back and look it up, see what that piece of legislation is and why we passed it, and then try to understand why we are at the impasse we are today. And I would just suggest you look to the Senate. You don't have to go too much further than about 100 feet down the hall from where I work every day and try to figure out what in the hell is going on over there. But we have to, Joe. We have to defend this, and this is our time, and it's not an option to walk away from it.
Well, Congressman, you certainly have your work cut out for you, but I have a feeling that when it comes down to it, you'll be debating this very passionately as you are tonight, and I got to think that something will be done if everybody has the same passion you do, as we're seeing right now. We thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks so much, and God bless you.
Okay, have a good weekend. So, Jessica, have Republicans made a major misstep here?
It's unpopular, but yeah, I think that they have. I mean, I think also, Republicans have been going on since November that they got this huge mandate to govern, right, and at the election, when really I believe that it was a repudiation of President Obama and didn't have a ton to do with the Democratic platform more generally. But anyway, putting that aside, they promised that they were going to govern. This is a big opportunity. It's your first shutdown, right? And they're just going for it, like steamrolling in. It's embarrassing for John Boehner that he couldn't get this together. We're talking about 3 weeks, which I think is a waste of time that we're going to have to reopen it when there are a lot of really important things that we're going to have to debate over the next 3 weeks. But I think it's just horrifying for them, quite frankly.
And they were low on time.
It's an embarrassment for everybody. I mean, the fact that the representative is saying that the Senate went home when the people who are actually working, if this is defunded, although they'll have to go to work, they're not going to be able to pay their mortgages because they're not going to get paid. It's a travesty.
Kicking the can down the road. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but unfortunately, we got bills to pay, so.
Got it.
It's for our advertisers. Coming up next, Governor Jeb Bush spoke today at CPAC down in Washington, Maryland, actually. Did he encounter smooth waters? This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV, DirecTV, Dish, Verizon, Fios, and a host of other cable providers. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by Heather Hansen, Jonathan Gilliam, and Jessica Tarloff. Thank you guys for coming here before happy hour. Usually that starts around an hour ago.
Absolutely.
And that's where we'll be after in about 45 minutes. Well, the Conservative Political Action Committee conference is currently underway outside of Washington, D.C., and we've got your highlights. Christie, during an interview with Laura Ingraham, says he thinks he could do okay if he decided to run for election, even against a guy like Jeb Bush.
Now, when there's been 42 years since we sent a Republican to the U.S. Senate in New Jersey, everybody said there's no way Chris Christie could win in 2009. And then they said, well, he won, but it was because the other guy was bad, not he was good. And in 2013, we'll kick him out. And I got 61% of the vote, 51% of the Hispanic vote, 22% of the African-American vote, and 54% of vote from women. Now, if I decide to run for president, I'm not worried about what polls say 21 months before we're going to elect the president of the United States.
And here, the Donald, Mr. Trump, and the crowd, also not very high on the former governor.
Likewise, Jeb Bush, he's in favor. He's in favor of Common Core. He's weak on immigration. Now think of it for a second. In favor of Common Core, he's weak on immigration. Do you remember his statement with "they come over for love"? That was his stance on immigration. I don't see him winning. I don't see there's any way. You people are going to have to make your own choice. Who knows?
Wow, well, we knew Donald wasn't a fan, but that was a lot of boos. But will the Donald run?
Okay, if I had to ask you on a scale of 1 to 100, where are you on this scale in terms of where you think you are in deciding to run?
1 to 100, I would say 75 and 80. I am really inclined. I want to do it so badly. You know, I have the theme. It's my theme. It's Make America Great Again. That's what I want to do. We can do that in this country if we had people that know what they're doing, if we had people that are competent.
Mr. Trump puts it between 75 and 80. That would be 77.5%. You heard it here first on Daily Wrap. There is zero chance he is running, but it's entertaining, right? Finally, Jeb Bush took time today at CPAC to discuss an issue that might keep him from being elected: immigration.
The plan also includes a path to legal status. I have not seen anybody, and I know there's disagreement here. Some of these people are angry about this, and look, I kind of feel your pain. I was in Miami this morning. It was 70 degrees, so the simple fact is, there is no plan to deport 11 million people. We should give them a path to legal status where they work, where they don't receive government benefits, where they don't break the law, where they learn English, and where they make a contribution to our society. That's what we need to be focused on.
A lot of reaction.
I love that crowd. They're like the one in Rocky IV, where they're all going against Rocky, and then he wins a couple of rounds, and they're all cheering for him. And make up your minds. Boo, cheer, good Lord. Anyway, panel, let's start with Governor Bush. Obviously, I saw you shaking your head in agreement. It seemed like you were almost...
I've never felt so good about a Bush before in my life. I mean, there's more to come out of his mouth that I won't agree with that much, but I think he's really on point with immigration reform. And I know that the primaries in general are very different places, and this is an issue that Hillary Clinton's facing as well. How does she, tailor herself right now to the left, and then, how does she head more towards the center once the general election comes around? But I think that Governor Bush is right on with immigration. I mean, the American people, they want a secure border, but they also want a pathway to citizenship, and no other Republican candidate is talking about that.
The crowd certainly liked that, and the fact that he used "I feel your pain" and stole a Bill Clinton
But
line.
then said the Miami weather thing, which I don't think added up too well. But
Yeah.
I would love Miami weather right now. So.
That would be nice. Heather.
I thought he did well. I thought he started off a little bit slow. I think that the format was good for him. He chose it to have the back and forth discussion. I thought that Sean Hannity handled it well and wasn't too tough on him. I think he's got a good campaign going. I think his communications director, Tim Miller, knows exactly what he's doing, and I'm really interested in watching how this campaign folds out.
John, this is the challenge I see and I agree with both of you. He seemed more presidential today. He was nervous in his first couple of speeches I've seen over the last couple of weeks. But can Jeb Bush overcome his brand? And his brand is defined, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on where you stand, by his brother and by his father, a one-termer, and then a guy who left office with his approval ratings in the low 30s. Can you overcome the Bush name?
Well, I think what we see there, and I really try to help the layman see what's going on here that may not be as politically inclined as the people on this panel.
That's why we have you here.
But when I was in the FBI, I ran special events, and we worked, several years in a row. We worked Fashion Week, and the fashion industry is in a bubble. Those people live in a bubble. They don't know anything about what goes on outside of the world, and politics is very similar. The GOP, whether or not Bush or, any of these other people can sway it, it's almost as if they can make the right sweater to wear and everybody feels it. His thing is, he's a down-to-earth talker. He's a pretty, level-headed guy. He shouldn't be trying to use comedy in a situation where people are getting ready to turn their backs on him. But, the rest of the world needs to realize, and really the GOP needs to realize this, and I think this is coming out now between the Senate and Congress, is that the people want a leader. They're tired of presidential. We don't elect kings, although we've started to elect kings. But this is the thing. We need to stop looking at who's presidential. We need to start looking at who has the answers. And that's the problem. I'm not even hearing it out of Jeb Bush. He says he wants to do this, he wants to do that. They always say that. We need a secure border, and we need to figure out where 11 million illegal people are that are in this country. Then we figure out, what do we do with these 11 million people? Do we give them status, or do we not give them status? But we got to figure out where they are. First of all, we don't even know.
I'm sure there's some people at home that are saying, why don't you throw your hat into the ring?
You know what? It's funny because on Twitter I get this a lot. At least probably 50 people a day saying you should run for president because of the way I speak.
I would way prefer you to Donald Trump.
Well, I'm not an actor. I'm not an actor.
The hair is better.
Yes.
Right? Yours is...
But the reality is, a leader in this country is going to have to either gain a monetary value somewhere where he can run a campaign to compete, as Ross Perot did back in the day, or they're going to have to subscribe to one of the parties, and that's the problem. I don't subscribe to a party, and a real leader right now that has solutions is not really going to subscribe to a party line.
I wonder, can an independent step forward here? And
I don't think so. It's interesting. The foreign policy is going to be a big deal, and you see independence. That's a really important thing for independence. But when you talk about that, it's the Republicans who have really increased in the polls and have come up at, I think, 18 points since October as far as foreign policy is concerned, and that's with the independents. So I don't think an independent can win, but I think they're going to be an important part of the election.
interesting. I say it once again. Keep your eye on Mr. John Kasich, the Ohio governor. I wish he were more prevalent here, but maybe it's a good idea to stay out of the spotlight and let these guys battle it out and then step in late. Anyway, coming up next, the president wants your ammo. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV.